In this episode, I am speaking with Donna Sardula, who is famous for LinkedIn profile optimization and makeover. We are speaking today about how to optimize your LinkedIn profile and boost your later in life career prospects. This is not something that most discussions around LinkedIn focus on. Cue the music.
Welcome to the Repurpose Your Career podcast, brought to you by Career Pivot. This podcast is where those of us in the second half of life come together to discuss how to repurpose our careers for the 21st century. Come listen to career experts give you proven strategies. Listen to people like you tell their stories on how they repurpose their careers. And finally, get your questions answered. Your host, Mark Miller, has made 6 career pivots over the last 30 years. He understands this is not about jumping out of the frying pan into a fire, but rather to create a plan where you make clear, actionable steps or pivots to a better future career. Are you ready to repurpose your career?
Welcome to episode 325 of the Repurpose Your Career podcast. My name is Mark Miller, and I'll be your host every Monday for discussion on what it's like to repurpose your career. In this episode, I am speaking with Donna Sardula, who is famous for LinkedIn profile optimization and makeover. We are speaking today about how to optimize your LinkedIn profile and boost your later in life career prospects. This is not something that most discussions around LinkedIn focus on. Let me read you a bit from Donna's About page from her website. My name is Donna Sardula, and in 2009, I pioneered my LinkedIn profile optimization methodology. Since then, my team and I have helped over 6,000 professionals from all over the world tell their story and build a powerful professional brand. Look, it doesn't matter who you are or what you do. It's not easy to write about yourself. I hear it all the time. I can sell snow to an Eskimo, manage complex product, lead exceptional teams, but write about myself? No way. Besides, who has time to sit down and complete your LinkedIn profile on your own? Maybe that's the reason why so many LinkedIn profiles suck. Yes, suck. You read that. You know this? People are Googling you. Your LinkedIn profile is more often than not your digital introduction and first impression with the world. If your LinkedIn profile does not showcase your skills and portray you as a polished professional, you are letting the ultimate opportunity slip away. This episode is sponsored by the Career Pivot community, but more on that later. Without any delay, let's get to my discussion with Donna Sardula. Welcome to the Repurpose Your Career podcast. I have the real joy of having Donna Sardula on the podcast. And Donna is a LinkedIn expert, and we're going to talk about LinkedIn as it relates to encore careers, career changers, things that people tend not to talk about. So, Donna, welcome to the podcast.
Mark, thank you so much for having me.
If someone wants to start an encore career, wants to decide to do something different. And I've had a number of people in my online community who've saying, good example was Debbie Schnurr, who was on the podcast about, she was a mechanical engineer. She's now a master gardener, but she still gets picked up for mechanical engineering jobs, which she doesn't care about anymore.
Yeah.
So what should she be doing?
She's got a weed. So she's a gardener. She's got a weed. That's what she's got to do. So, that's something I see that all the time. And what happens is, people, first let's talk, what is LinkedIn? LinkedIn is more than just a network, a social network. It is a database. It is a search engine. And people are looking for someone like you, and they may not know you exist, but they know there's someone out there who has skills and strengths and abilities, and they need that. And the way they do this is they go in and they search by keyword, and they're putting in keywords hoping to find you. So What is the issue with Debbie? Debbie has a profile that is perhaps it's an obituary of a different life that she lived. And it's chock full of those keywords and those stories and those accomplishments. And so, of course, she's getting caught for those keywords. And it's not who she is today. So that LinkedIn profile really always needs to be weeded. It needs to be curated, and it needs to be current as to who you are and what you're doing right now.
I had Thea Kelly on the podcast a couple of years ago talking about resumes and career pivot resumes. And one thing she talked about doing was taking your own language and translate it into new. So she used the example of a police officer who reported to the chief of police. So rather than being chief of police, she reported to the chief executive officer.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah. Yeah, because the key word is the idea is you want to think in terms of your goal. Like where do you want to go? Who do you want to be? What does that next opportunity look like? And keep in mind, these opportunities could be a whole bunch of things, right? The opportunity might be, I want to be interviewed by, reporters and journalists in the media. It could be, I want a partnership, or I want investors, right? I mean, the opportunity can match different ideas. It doesn't have to be, I want a job. I mean, it could be, but it doesn't have to be. But really think in terms of what that next opportunity looks like for you. And it could be a couple of these things. It doesn't have to be just one. But once you know what it is that you want, think in terms of that target audience and what would they be searching for? What would be those keywords? What would make you that perfect candidate? Maybe even think in terms of, what is that job description that a recruiter might be sourcing for? How do they describe this role and that person? You find that job description, read it. I mean, there's so much value in that. There's treasure there. Figure out what it is that would make you the perfect candidate, and then start to align. Just like that example that you just gave, align it. So you're showcasing yourself as that perfect person. Now, I wouldn't say lie, do not lie, be ethical. But you can shine the spotlight on certain aspects of what you did. And don't be afraid, like I said earlier, to weed out the stuff that you don't ever want to do again, right? A lot of times when people have issues with their profile and getting found for the wrong opportunities, the reason is it's a backloaded resume. What does that mean? A backloaded resume is the most current stuff is almost empty. And the old stuff is robust and full of keywords. When the algorithm is looking, it finds those old keywords, and that's what you're getting found for.
But it's so hard to get rid of that old stuff. I was so proud of it.
I know. We've got to have sort of like a Zen mindset, like let it go, let it go. You can still talk about these things, but we don't want to feed the algorithm old, out of date accomplishments and keywords. You've got to let it go. You got to cull, you got to cut, and you got to talk about the things that you want to keep doing.
Where are the best places to put those keywords?
Good question. The headline is huge. Headline is important. The about section is important. The job title is important, and the job experience is important. Those are the areas where you really want to concentrate your keywords. Now, certainly in the skills, that's always a fabulous place as well. But ultimately, headline, about, job title, job description. Now, with that said, do not become obnoxious. Do not be redundant in your repetitiveness of these keywords. You want to use keywords contextually. You want to use them within a narrative. Use them organically. Speak like you're speaking to a person, but just, make sure that you're being diligent in terms of the usage of the word.
Yeah, one of the things I used to deal with a lot of product managers,
Mhm.
And product managers' job titles tend to be pretty nebulous, like product manager. Yet they tended to wear a lot of hats.
Yeah.
So what I would have people do is put their official job title, then follow it with all the other job titles that was representative of what
Yeah.
they
Relevant.
did, that
Yeah.
were relevant, and most importantly, don't lie.
Exactly.
Therefore, when a lot of recruiters are searching, they're searching on job titles.
Mhm.
And if I'm also a project manager at the same time that I'm a product manager, I'm also doing product marketing, then I want to put all those in there. And again, don't lie.
Don't lie, but shine the spotlight on. Now, here's the thing. If you're a product manager and you do a lot of project management, but project management is not what floats your boat.
Yeah.
Don't talk about the project management. Talk about the marketing. Talk about the data analysis. Whatever it is that you really enjoy doing, that's what you talk about. The things that you don't enjoy, don't feed the algorithm those crunchy keywords.
Yeah, one of the fun pieces of the LinkedIn profile is the about section. So how should we be writing our about section?
Well, let's say this, the way you should not be writing it is you don't want to copy and paste your resume, profile section or summary section. You don't want to list your specialties one right after the other. You don't want to grab an old bio written in third person and copy and paste it in there. All right. Those are all things that I see done that I would say don't do. Do not do these things. What do you do instead? What you do instead is you recognize what the about section is. It is a digital introduction. It is your first impression. It should be your professional manifesto. It should be written to your target audience. It should be written in first person. There are a few situations where sure, third person might work. But ultimately, it's a first person narrative. And I want you to open up and show the world you're human, that you're a person, that you stand for something, that you recognize your value, you understand what differentiates you, and that you know what you want. You know how you can help others. That right there, if you can just state, this is who I am, this is what I do, this is how I help, this is what I stand for, and this is why it makes a difference, you've got yourself an absolutely perfect about section.
This episode is sponsored by the Career Pivot membership community. The Career Pivot membership community is a group of people from all over the US and Canada with diverse backgrounds. This is a community where everyone is there to help everyone else out figure out what they want to do in the second half of life and then make it happen. Many have made changes that they did not know existed or was possible when they came to the community. They learned from each other and broadened their horizons on what was really possible. Let's hear what Sarah had to say about being part of the community.
So, for example, when I was first exploring the idea of moving into higher ed and I was scheduling informational interviews or just networking meetings with people, I decided it would be helpful to have business cards. I was sort of struggling with how to, what kind of verbiage I should use. And it seemed like I needed 2 different ones and whatever. And I was able to post what I was thinking, my sort of designs on the community website, and people were gracious enough to give me really helpful feedback. So those kinds of things were really helpful and just sort of kept me moving along. Like, I feel like if I wasn't in the community, I could easily have stalled out at many different points along the way. And so it sort of kept my momentum going and kept me hopeful.
You can't just join the community. I bring people into the community every few months in groups. You can sign up for the waiting list, so when I open the door for new members, you'll be notified. If you're interested in learning more about the endeavor and sign up for the waiting list, please go to careerpivot.com/community. Now, back to the episode. I like to say it's about, I want to be able to tell my story,
Mhm.
which is critical for people who are making changes. Or I also claim I've got several people in my online community who are taking a step back. They're older.
Mhm.
And sometimes it's a matter of, okay, why am I taking this step back? Because I always claim when you're dealing with a situation where you're going to work for somebody 20 years younger,
Mhm.
it's a matter of getting the elephant out of the room immediately,
Yeah.
right? I'm older. I have a gentleman in my online community who's in his late 60s. He went in to interview with three guys who were half his age. And after he got out, the HR person came over to him and said, "Wow, you intimidated them."
Oh,
Well,
really?
and and he's not an intimidating guy, but he had so much experience, they thought they were going to lose their jobs to him.
That's always a concern, depending upon who you're interviewing with. Yeah.
Being able to tell your story in the about section of why am I doing what I'm doing?
Yeah.
Or why am I going in the direction? I mean, I've got several people in my online community who have been dealing with ailing parents and have taken time off. And I claim, by the way, that's project management.
It is. And did you know that you can actually add career breaks into your
Yes.
experience section, which is a nice way of being very upfront about that. You know, there's something that you said earlier that I think is really important, Mark, and that is there's a lot of experts out there that talk about cloaking your age, that say, "Oh, don't put in any dates, or just stop your career trajectory at 1995." I really feel that it starts with us, and we have to own our age. We have to be proud of our age. And if we're cloaking it, that means that there's something wrong with it, and there isn't. Put it out there. And if there are companies out there that are going to discriminate against you, and there are, come on, let's be honest. I mean, I'm not a Pollyanna here, but who wants to work for them anyway? There's better companies out there who recognize what a person with age and experience and a robust background brings to the organization, and they're going to hire you. So find those organizations and stop catering to those that are discriminating.
I claim one of the things you need to do is not so much take out old jobs, but take out irrelevant things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I wrote a LinkedIn I wrote a blog post many years ago about the 5 things on your resume that make you look too old.
Mm-hmm.
And one of them was obsolete skills. I was an MS-DOS control programmer.
Yeah. I was a little bit of a DOS jockey myself back in the day.
So
I did love that DOS shell prompt.
well, I was actually rewriting stuff to put on. I put DOS on IBM display writers. So, but it's learned to say, okay, what's relevant today and what's not relevant.
Yeah. Well, it's not too old, right? It's not about being too old. It's about
Yes.
being irrelevant, right? It's about its relevancy. And I agree with you. I can't tell you how many people show me their resume and it'll say, "Oh, MS Office." MS Office. I always say, take that off. My kid was in kindergarten learning, Microsoft Word. It's like saying I can take a bath by myself. So it's that I agree with you totally. It's take off the stuff that doesn't showcase that.
And what's your feeling about using ChatGPT and other generative AI to help you kind of formulate some of the stuff in your LinkedIn profile?
I love ChatGPT. I absolutely adore it. It scares me to no end, but I absolutely love it. And if a person can utilize it, I think it's a fabulous tool. I would suggest don't lean on it too much, right? You want to use it in that iterative way where You don't just say, write me a profile, but you give it all of these things, you really prompt it and you iterate it and you get it to the point where it is you, or it's very nearly you. And then you go through and you make sure that it is absolutely you. I have a instant profile program that utilizes AI. And so you're able to generate it. I already have the prompts built in and I'm asking the right questions that you probably wouldn't even think to ask. And it generates a really strong profile. At the same time, AI isn't going to say to you, oh, let's really think about what your dreams are. Let's think about where you're headed. Let's think of what the things that you did in your past that relate. And, oh, you're talking about this, and this is really important. You probably didn't even realize that this is a strength, right? So there's a place for AI. There's also a place to work with, a professional who can look into your soul and help you. So yes, I think it's good. I also think you can't rely on it 100%.
Well, I wrote a recent blog post on how to use ChatGPT to generate your LinkedIn headline.
Mm-hmm.
And I had it look at my profile. I said, look at my entire profile, come up with 5 examples. Then I pulled too much stuff from too far back in my past. And then I told it, well, only use the last 10 years. Because these tools, they're great for ideation.
Yeah.
And you're asking for 5 examples or 10 examples. But I like to say, using ChatGPT or Bard or any of the generative AI is like having a young, inexperienced intern. It's how you talk to it.
Yeah.
The more direct information you give it, the better you will get.
I also think there's an aspect of having a vision as well, right? Because if you don't go into it with a vision of what that end state might be, that's when it goes off the rails and you've got this big cloud. You almost need to have a vision. Not you almost need to have a vision. Yeah. And then you want to work with it, the ideation, then the iteration, and the editing to get it to that final point. And I will say this, what I love about ChatGPT is that back and forth. It is the chat. It's that, all right, now let's, can you make it more confident? Now, can you can you cut this down to 250 words? And can you include this? And it's that back and forth where all of a sudden you've got something that's, it's magical.
Yeah, my buddy Ryan wrote and had a LinkedIn Live where he asked it, well, rewrite this in a snarky tone, but no cuss words. Because ChatGPT, if you ask it to talk snarky, it will throw in 4-letter.
Oh, surprising! I have not asked it to do that yet.
And I've done that with a couple of different things where I've been playing with it for my own profile, and I'm snarky. So it gives me but it's phrased things in a far more creative way than I would have thought of doing. I'm a recovering engineer. Yes, there's a 12-step program for that. It would come up with wording and phrasing that's going, ooh, I like that. Would I have come up with it on my own? The answer is probably not. But I also had, like we said, you have to iterate it and play with it and find what sounds right to you. And more importantly, is it me?
And I also would, and not because I've got a team of writers that I need to keep busy, but I do think it is important to say, it's yes, I could go that route. And I think for some people going that route makes perfect sense. But I also think there's times when it's important to invest in yourself and to work with someone who can coach you and consult with you and really pull things out of you and help you see different horizons and different journeys to get to that vision, and maybe even help with the vision and the mindset as well, right? There are limitations to AI, and I almost feel that no matter how much it's going to learn, it's never going to, look into your soul and really help you understand what's in there, So recognize that AI is powerful. It's revolutionary. It absolutely is a tool that you should be using. And if you haven't used it, absolutely get on there and start, because it will blow your brain. But don't think it's the only way. There are other ways that work as well.
Well, let me ask you this. How important is it to have a current job on your LinkedIn profile?
Oh, well, at one time, not having a current position was problematic. It prevented you from turning up higher in search. It stopped you from having a complete profile. There were some negatives, not to mention just the connotation of not having a current experience. And so what we did is we would put in a current experience. It was like looking for my next opportunity. It was sort of like a workaround. If you don't have a current experience, you don't have a current experience. Life goes on. You will get a new current experience. I don't want people to get hung up on things that they can't control. And I don't necessarily want to be that person saying, let's hack the system together. Let's find, loopholes and workarounds, especially if, that workaround takes a year and then you're sending out anniversary notices that you've been looking for 1 year. That's just not a good thing. But it's good to have one. But if you don't, you don't. Life goes on.
Yeah, one of the things I've always said is, if you, given the uncertainty of the world we live in, is start an LLC. I mean, I had a DBA of global basis consulting, and I just kept that, and I eventually sold the domain. But I always kept a business, and it might be like my official business is not Career Pivot, it's Mark Miller and Associates LLC. Go ahead and create that, because, by the way, if you get laid off, you can go do some consulting through it. You already have a business entity, and therefore, because it's yours, it's always there.
That's a great idea. And I think for some people, that is a game changer in terms of advice. I don't think it works for every single person,
no.
But for that person out there right now, fractional is huge. You hear a lot about that. To consult, it's a great side gig. It's something that you can do. There's flexibility to it. There's freedom. Nothing really has to stop you unless you let it.
Donna, this has been great. If there's one piece of advice that you have when creating your LinkedIn profile or optimizing your LinkedIn profile, what might that be?
My advice that I'm going to give right now is something that I think has been very much a part of this whole conversation. And that is, your LinkedIn profile should reflect not only who you are today, but where you're going in the future. And it's funny, time flies. It doesn't take long for things to become out of date. And so I think it's one of those things where you really do need to keep looking at it and keep updating it, and have certain times where you say, you know what, let me go right back and let me really make sure. Maybe it's time to truly recalibrate from top to bottom, because there's only so many times that you can put one thing on top of another thing and everything moves down, right? You really do need to hone it and recalibrate to where you're now headed, because there's always like little changes in direction that we're making that we don't even realize that we're making. So what is my for your audience right now? It's, who are you today? Who do you want to be tomorrow? And keep asking yourself that, and always make sure that that LinkedIn profile is reflecting those current answers.
And tells that story.
And tells that story. Exactly.
So, Donna, this has been great.
Thank you, Mark.
If someone wanted to reach out and contact you, how might they do that? And what services do you offer?
Well, thank you very much, Mark. You can visit me on my LinkedIn profile, Donna Serdula. You can visit my website, linkedin-makeover.com. The services that we offer are LinkedIn profile writing, resume writing. We help with bios and cover letters and anything that has to do with branding your career, branding your business and its people on LinkedIn. That's the field that we're playing in. And we love helping people. We love helping people reach their full potential.
Well, Donna, thank you very much for being on the Repurpose Your Career podcast.
Thank you, Mark, for having me. It has been a pleasure.
I really like Donna's closing advice about your LinkedIn profile should represent who you are today and where you're going tomorrow. Take a moment, go to thecareerpivot.com and sign up for the weekly Career Pivot Insights newsletter, which is sent out every Sunday. You will get a weekly update in this podcast, white papers, and new blog posts. When you subscribe, you will receive my latest white paper, Ageism, the Last Acceptable Bias. While there, do not forget to check out the Career Pivot community at careerpivot.com/community. Feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. Look for Career Pivot on LinkedIn. Thank you for listening all the way to the end of the Repurpose Your Career podcast. You will find all the show notes at careerpivot.com/episode-325. You can also subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, Podbeam, Overcast, Spotify, Pandora, Amazon Music, and lots of other places where podcasts can be found. In fact, this podcast can be found on the Repurpose Your Career podcast channel on YouTube. Hope to see you next Monday for another episode of Repurpose Your Career podcast.